Welcome back, Cascadia fans. I'm John Floresca here with my co-host Eddie Smith, and Decision Day is upon us. We have hit the final weekend of the season. We have all the games coming up to finish off the season. We'll know who the Supporter Shield champion is. We'll know who's in the playoffs. We'll know all that seeding after this weekend. We do get a short break before the playoffs, so the players will have time to rest. But let's talk about this last game. We're going to start off with the bad news. The Western Conference playoff field has been set in terms of who is going to play. The seeding is not quite decided yet. And the Vancouver Whitecaps, unfortunately, will not be playing in the postseason. Eddie, give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, if you're a Whitecaps fan, you're definitely upset about this club. I was looking at some of the comments on Facebook, and I saw one comment where it was, we shouldn't make the playoffs, instead we should be relegated. But I don't think it's really that bad for Vancouver supporters. I mean, yes, it was a tough season, but I loved the fight that Vancouver had towards the end of the season. I strongly thought that they were going to make the playoffs until MLS decided they were going to do points per game, which then obviously brought San Jose up. And at first I was very upset about that, with San Jose qualifying for a play, or not San Jose, Colorado. I was upset about Colorado getting into that playoff spot. But if you look at how they played their last two matches, they were unbelievable against Seattle and LAFC.
Portland lost to Colorado 1-0 on Wednesday, my friend.
Oh my God!
You're thinking San Jose. San Jose beat LA.
Off.
That's okay.
I'm thinking about so many games in my head right now.
Yeah.
But anyways, they did play amazing, and I feel like Colorado deserves to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, they just beat the two of the teams trying to get the top spot in the West, in Seattle and Portland. So they basically said, hey, we may have played less games than you, but we can throw punches with the best teams. It's unfortunate that knocks the Vancouver Whitecaps out, but there's some good things about this. One, the Vancouver Whitecaps get to go home, and with the COVID situation, they've been away from their families for so long. They're going to be relieved to get to go home. The good news is they have figured out how to get Montero and Cavallini on the field at the same time. Hopefully going into next season, that can carry over. They have a striking duo. They need to focus on their midfield and their defense going into next season. They have the money, they have the cap space to focus on those areas. And those are both very exciting things. I do expect them to play with passion in their last game, though. They are playing the LA Galaxy to finish out the season. Both teams are eliminated from the playoffs. Neither team has anything to play for. But I think Vancouver has a little bit more pride and more like gusto to try to really end this season in a positive way than LA does.
I agree. One thing I want to ask you is, do you think Marc Dos Santos did a good enough job with the club to keep his job for next season?
I definitely think he did. I mean, it has been an incredibly difficult season. They went down to the MIB tournament without a whole slew of their main players. No Cavallini, no Montero, no Andy Rose. And they qualified for the knockout stage.
With a 4% chance in that last match.
Right. So that already was a positive. They lost in the first round, but that's a positive. They came back to MLS play against the Canadian teams. They started off very, very poorly, especially on the road. But then once they got Montero and Cavallini playing well together, things really started to get the ball rolling. I feel like if it was a full-length season, this Whitecaps team could come on strong for the next 10 games. Unfortunately, we don't get 10 more games.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but for Whitecaps supporters, I think the future is definitely bright going into next season. I am really looking forward to what next season's going to bring for Vancouver, especially hopefully with supporters maybe in the stands again, giving the players that extra boost. I think it'll be a fun season next year for really all three of our Cascadia teams, but especially Vancouver.
I'm excited for Vancouver. I'm not going to blow over this last game of the season, though. I'm going to give a projection. It's hard to predict games where neither team has anything to play for, though. So I'm just going to go totally homer here, and I'm going to say 3-0 Vancouver because I can.
You know what? I don't think that's really far off. I think that's a decent projection because I feel like Vancouver playing at home ish.
Providence Park.
I mean, all the players are there, so I expect to see Cavallini. I expect to see Montero. So they're gonna be fully ready for LA. My thoughts are: is Chicharito gonna bail on another trip up to Portland? He bailed on a trip to Portland early a few weeks ago, so I wouldn't be surprised if he did it again.
But Chicharito came on as a sub against Seattle, so he's playing again.
But that was at home.
I think he plays. It's the last game of the season. He said weight's been lifting off his shoulders. He'll want to get 90 more minutes in, or maybe even just 25 more minutes before the season's over, and say, "Hey, I'm committed to this for next year." But who knows?
I think I'm iffy on if he's going to travel with the club. But even if he does, I'm putting this as a Vancouver victory. Vancouver might give up a goal, but I'm going to say 3-1. I think Vancouver has more heart into this match than LA does.
I think so too. I think so. LA's had no heart all season. So, well, Vancouver's game, they have nothing to play for. Our other two Cascadia teams have a ton to play for. There are 3 teams vying for the top spot in the West: Portland, Seattle, and Sporting Kansas City. Sporting Kansas City has the advantage. If they win, they get the number 1 spot. But if they lose, then Portland has the advantage. If they win, they get the number 1 spot. If both Portland and Sporting Kansas City, and I shouldn't say lose, I should say lose or draw, then Seattle is the 3rd team. They have a shot for the number 1 spot. Eddie, who do you think is going to come away with this number 1 spot in the West?
Oh man, it's going to be a tough one to project. All 3 teams, I think, can. Well, I don't even know who Sporting Kansas City's facing.
I got you. They got RSL. Sporting Kansas City is in RSL. RSL has been a mess. I think Sporting Kansas City has the easiest path to that number 1 spot.
Yeah,
they are on the road. They are on the road, so that's difficult, them being on the road. But they do have the easiest team in RSL compared to Seattle and Portland.
Yeah, Seattle is the only one at home, and they're facing a San Jose side that they've been playing decently.
They've been trending up for sure.
Yeah,
they've been, some analysts say that they could be the hottest team entering the playoffs.
Yeah, San Jose and Seattle have had 2 0-0 games, and then the one match in Seattle where Seattle blew them out 7-1, which just kind of shows to me that it was kind of an anomaly that happened.
That was that weird San Jose midseason slump where they lost like 4 games in a row by 3-4 goals. And then San Jose turned it on. They made the playoffs. What'll be really interesting is if Seattle wins this and things fall the right way, these teams could face each other first round in the playoffs. That's down the road. But let's just say, does Seattle win this game?
I think Seattle will win the match against San Jose. Probably it'll be a close one. It'll be 2-1, I think.
All right. So Seattle wins. Portland has to win in order to get the top spot if Seattle wins. Does Portland win? They have probably the hardest game of the 3 teams. They go to LAFC to face Bob Bradley.
Yeah, um, I mean, LAFC just did lose to San Jose 3-2. Unfortunately, that one also knocked Vancouver out of the playoffs because of that win for San Jose. Um, but before that, they had won a match against the Galaxy at home and Houston Dynamo at home. Um, they're, I think they're kind of iffy on how they're playing. They're definitely playing better at home than on the road. Um, I think this one's gonna be close. I'm gonna say it's gonna be 2-2.
2-2. The last time they played in LAFC, they took it to Portland. They beat Portland 4-2. Although I recall doing that game, and it was closer than that 4-2 score line really was. I think it was 3-2, and then a late goal made it 4-2. So this one could have some fireworks. LAFC's looking to move up the standings a little bit. That they have something to play for. Portland has something to play for. I've got this check marked as probably the most exciting game in the Western Conference this weekend. I think it's going to end up in a draw as well. I think it's going to end up 2-2. Both teams are playing for too much for it to go either way. So with Seattle's win and Portland's draw, it's going to come down to whether or not Sporting Kansas City gets past RSL. Eddie, are we going to have a Seattle Sounders top seed in the West or a Sporting Kansas City top team in the West based on our current projections?
Well, if you look at how RSL's been trending, they lost to LA Galaxy 2-1. They lost to San Jose 2-0. Both of those were on the road. They tied Dallas at home. And their last victory was against Portland in Utah. And so it's not really trending well for RSL, but at the same time, I think they're looking for a victory right now. And even though they're out of the playoffs, do they want to play spoiler? I mean, I've seen it many times where eliminated teams
They've got nothing to lose.
Really hurt the teams that are fighting for something. So it can definitely happen, but I think this time around, I see Kansas City taking it, and I think I can see it. I can see them taking it pretty handily and maybe doing 3-1 over RSL.
I agree with you. I have this going the same way. I've got RSL winning their game, taking the number 1 spot. I've got Seattle winning their game. Or sorry, yes,
you said RSL.
Sporting. Sorry, Sporting Kansas City winning their game, taking the number 1 spot. I've got Seattle winning their game to take the number 2 spot, and I've got Portland drawing their game for the number 3 spot, which is exciting because that means Seattle and Portland should be on the same half of the playoff bracket if I'm visualizing it correctly. I don't even know. I haven't looked at it exactly. We'll look at it after this weekend's games.
One thing I want to say with Seattle and Portland is they can go as high as first, but they can drop as low as 4th. Dallas is right there, and if Dallas gets a win and either Portland or Seattle lose, then they will drop down to 4th.
So maybe me saying 1, 2, 3 for those 3 teams is being a little overexcited, but
no, I think it's pretty spot on. I think that the 3 clubs definitely have their shots of staying in the top 3. I think you'll stay top 3 for those three clubs.
All right. Well, kind of a different show for you guys. We did a lot of playoff talk because it is decision day. Not a lot of analysis of the teams themselves, but we've talked about these teams for so long now because it's just been Western Conference teams playing each other. I want your quick take, Eddie. Our teams haven't heard anything about the Eastern Conference, but there is a supporter shield race, Philly and Toronto. I know you haven't done any research on this. Who do you want to win the supporter shield between the two?
Philly.
I'm right with you.
I think everyone in Cascade, maybe not Portland, but I know Vancouver and I know Seattle do not want to see Toronto in that number one spot. But yeah, I definitely would love to see Philly take that spot. You're definitely not going to see anyone from the West taking it. They're too far behind. So it's definitely going to be an Eastern
Yeah,
Conference
they've
battle
already
between
said that
Philly
those
and
two
Toronto.
teams, those two teams are the only two teams that can win it.
Yep.
Philly has the advantage. A Philly win and it's over. If Philly ends up getting less points this weekend, whether it be a tie loss, a win tie, a win loss, less points than Toronto, Toronto will get it. But if the results are the same, win win, tie tie, loss loss, Philly will get it. So Philly's going to get it. I think they're playing a New England side that I think will give up the 3 to them.
Well, New England though has a little bit to play for as well. They don't want to lose. That's for sure. Well, no, they're actually no. I think they're pretty solid in that 6th spot. The Toronto is facing New York Red Bulls, and they are fighting for a spot. I think it's going to be tougher for Toronto. So I'm going to give it to Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia can pull out the victory. New England might look at it as, hey, we're not going to lose anything. We're not going to gain anything. So let's just rest players for the playoffs. I could definitely see that, even though there is an international break and everyone's going to get a rest anyways. So we'll see. It might be their chance to start some young players and get those guys some minutes. But yeah, New York Red Bulls definitely have something to fight for. So that's going to be the tough one, the tough matchup for the week in the Eastern Conference.
Well, that's your decision day lowdown. Really, because our Cascadia teams are at the top of the West, those are the important games to watch for the West. We were able to touch on the East for a little bit for the first time all season. We got to talk about the East. Because it's decision day, games are played at the same time. Eastern Conference games start at 1:30 Arizona time. That's going to be 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. The Western Conference games will start at, 4:30 my time, 3:30 your time. Depending on your local broadcast, you're going to get it on your local channels. If you don't live local, then you're going to have to watch it on ESPN Plus. The games that are nationally televised are Portland and LAFC. They're going to be on Fox Sports 1. So they are a nationally televised game, as well as Philly, New England, because they're thinking that that's going to be the Supporter Shield clinching game. So enjoy watching some soccer this weekend. Eddie, which games are you planning on watching out of all of these games?
Well, I'm definitely going to be paying attention to Seattle, San Jose, and Portland, LA, because I want to see what's going to happen there. I'll probably be checking in on Sporting Kansas City every once in a while. And then, I mean, who doesn't want to watch that Supporter Shield race over in the East? So, yeah, I'm going to be checking in on those games as well. I'm going to be all over the board on my phone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bold move by MLS to put it on a Sunday. Going to try to compete with the NFL, but I think they're going to do a good job with it. I've got Philly, New England. I'm watching that whole game start to finish, without a doubt. And then I will be maybe dual screening LAFC, Portland, and Seattle, San Jose. Sorry, Vancouver, your game not that important. But that's just the way it goes in the last week of the season.
Well, that's going to be our show. And we would love to hear from you, your thoughts on how you think that this race is going to end up. And as always, go Cascadia.